Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a new episode of Conversations with My Son. This is Tarun, and I'm joined again by my regular host and co podcaster.
Kian!
Hello,
Hi.
Kian.
Hi. Hi, everyone. It's good to be back.
It's been a few weeks since we recorded, and your spot was kidnapped or taken over by your little sister.
It wasn't really that. She wanted to set up her own podcast. She wanted to do one of her own podcasts. Um, to just so she can have a part on her own on this
Yeah,
one
but
page.
you be careful. She's becoming quite the podcast addict, so she might just take you over, Kian.
Definitely not.
Definitely not. Okay, well, it's still good to be back, and I enjoy our conversation. So it's fun to have you back, and I'm looking forward to this episode because I think it's one of the episodes that I think is long overdue, and we should talk about because it's a topic you and I have talked about before. How this podcast started, and where the idea came from, and how we got into it, uh, and things like that, and how the ideas and episodes evolved. So you want to start, like, you want to tell our listeners how the original idea came
Yeah,
about.
yeah. This time I think I should ask the questions first because I don't really know that much. How you like what how you form this podcast and things. But my first question is, what made you make this form this all form this series of podcasts?
So I think if you remember, Kian, I was doing another series of podcasts about being a Sindhi, and there's a few episodes out there. We I tried it with another person, and then I also tried a podcast with another website, and none of those things really worked out. And then I was thinking about an idea as to what else we could do, and I thought, you know what, since we've created a kids book company and we've done something over there, which is another topic we'll come back to in another episode. Maybe there's something to do with kids. And I think that's when I asked you, Kian, would you be interested in doing a podcast? And initially you were hesitant, but then I think as you got into it, you got more excited. And, that's where the idea came from. Secondly, I think there was a part of me that said, look, let's do a podcast. It might be a good way for you and I to chat, to get to know one another better and sort of hang out really on some cool, fun topics. But also, if down the line we have these episodes saved and recorded and stuff, when you grow up, you can listen to it again and sort of
Like,
track your own progression and your
and
history and
also maybe keep the tradition going, maybe.
keep the tradition going, make your kids listen to it, have a podcast if podcasts still exist in the future with your kids, and talk about that. And the third reason I did it, many years ago I used to write for a website in India called Kid Stop Press. If you remember, I used to write blogs for them, and little snippets about what it is like being a parent, and what it means to have kids and how you engage. And I thought I'd convert some of that into a podcast because there's less focus on blogs and things like that, and people listen to podcasts. So now we would do something about kids and parenting and stuff, and you can ask me about parents, about being a parent. So those were the main reasons why my podcast came about. And I have to say it's been fun. We've done 20 odd episodes
It's
so far.
definitely been fun.
We've done 20 odd fun episodes. We've had some guests come in. I think we have some guests planned where you'd want to have people from your family and friends and others come join in. So we'll do some more of that, and the more we do, and if we get popular and people start following or continue following us, then it would be interesting to see who else we can bring on here.
It would be pretty interesting. So my next question would probably be Stupid. What made you think that it would only work with, like, it might it just might only work with one of your family members?
As in with you?
Yeah, or
Yeah, I thought about it. So, Mama and I have been discussing this for a while, and I've always been looking to do other different things from besides my day to day job. And my job is in finance, and it sometimes can be boring. It's about numbers and Excel and all of that. So I've always had this creative side where I wanted to do something different. So I thought, okay, should I do a podcast on finance? And I was like, nah, that's boring. Should I do a podcast on work? And I was like, nah, nobody wants to listen to things about work. Then I was like, okay, maybe I can give people advice on careers and jobs and things like that. And I was like, nah, that's boring too. And there's too much of that. So then I thought, okay, what else am I good at? And what else would people want to listen to? And that's when I thought about all the parenting stuff I've done, because being a parent can be stressful too, and people these days want to learn about how to engage with kids and how to sort of interact with their kids, and what good parenting approaches might be and stuff like that. So I thought about that, and I wanted to sort of bring my blogs and my previous experience alive. And I was like, should I do that on my own? And I was like, nah, that's boring too. So that's when I thought, okay, should I bring Mama on board? And I was like, nah, Mama's too shy. She doesn't like doing that. So then I was like, okay, who's going to be the sporting person who'll do it? And I asked you, and you were like, yes, let's do it. So that's when I decided to do it with a family member, and here we are. Also, if you see many of the podcasts that are out there and many of the good ones that are out there, there's usually two people chatting about stuff. That's why I wanted a family member. And you joined, and then your little sister is the ever enthusiastic and eager person, and she agreed to do a few episodes, so that's been fun too. So that's where we are, and it's been a good experience, and I think it's been going well so far. So that's how it started. That's how I got the thought to involve a family member.
I'm glad that I have a sister though. So if I'm like away or sick or doing something that's important, I have someone to fill in for me.
Yes, exactly. I think you were busy on a couple of those days, and you had your other activities. So your little sister stepped in and filled your busy boots with one or two of her episodes. So yeah, it's been good.
Yeah.
What else, Kian? What other questions you have on this podcast? Let me ask you one. So when I first approached you to do this podcast, what was your initial thought? Were you? I know you were a little reluctant, a little hesitant, but what else came to your mind about the podcast?
I was like, how are we? I was like, how are we gonna do this? It was like because I've never done something that might like burst out and become pop pretty popular.
Mm-hmm.
I've never done something like that. Um, and I had quite a few activities after school. So like, where is the time gonna be? But I really, 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 really want to do this.
So that was your initial thought. You were just worried that you're not sure how it would turn out. But it seems like, looking at our numbers, it's been increasing in popularity, and people are enjoying it. I'm sure you're telling your friends about it too, that you're doing a podcast, and that's how the more people listen and spread the word, we'll get better and a bigger audience. But so it's going well. But I'm glad again you sort of got over that, and I think there's a lesson in there, right? Like we're all sort of learning as we go along. And I had never done a podcast before. Sort of last year I said I did one of those Cindy ones, and that was my first experience with it. But this was something totally different, because here I was creating the content, and excited about the experience. So wanted to see how we could build on it. And I sort of learned along the way too. I'm not perfect, we could get bigger numbers and do a better job of attracting an audience, but hey, here we are, and we're going along, and I think it's working well so far. So I think you were a little apprehensive, but now you've become more comfortable. So my next question is, how have you become more comfortable, and how have you learned to speak and adapt in this podcast?
Like I just pretend sometimes it's usually just like so I'll start with how I got so how I learned to speak a little bit more and like got comfortable with this place. I am with doing all this. The I only like it's just I just usually I'm just usually talking like I am only talking to you.
Yeah, so it's like we're just having a conversation, and I think initially you were not sure if that would work, right?
Yeah.
So we're almost pretending like nobody's listening, even though hundreds of people are listening to our podcast, and we're just like pretending we're two of us in a room having a chat about a topic one day, and then we go from there. Let me ask you. I think we have a little more time, Kian. Let me ask you one more question, and then we'll sort of wrap up. But your my other question for you was that we've sort of developed our topics as we go along, and sometimes it's an idea that strikes me. Sometimes it's an idea that comes to Mama, and she gives us a suggestion. But sometimes you have ideas, and I'm curious, where do your ideas for the podcast come from? Because some of them have been pretty cool, and we've incorporated them into our episodes and stuff, or even done a full episode on it. For instance, this one is your idea. So where did this idea come from?
Like all the great ideas don't really come like what I, like don't really come when I'm trying to think about them. But when we're on that topic, I'm not thinking about them. I'm just thinking about something else. When you're talking about it, then if I can hear it, like something just suddenly pops into my head. Like we're trying to think of something about this one, and I thought, it's okay. We'll just do something random. I'll just maybe something will just randomly pop up in Papa's head, but then I like, and then boom, this idea came.
It's a good idea because we've traced our origins and thought about why and where they started from, and we can take it forward. So I think as we evolve and as we do more with this podcast, I want to invite some of our listeners to come back to us and throw in suggestions on what topics they'd like to hear, and that will help us generate some ideas and creative stuff too, right?
Of course it will.
Cool. I think, Ian, that's a good sort of episode on this podcast and the history of it. Any more questions for me before we I turn it back to you for one last thought?
Should we put out some? I'm gonna ask this to you and all our listeners, but should we put out like something where you can fill in like a list of we might what the listeners might want us to do, or like
Yeah,
suggestions?
listeners, we'll put out an open poll or an invitation for suggestions from you guys on topics you'd like to listen to, and as per key and suggestion, do send them in and let us know what you'd like us to talk about as father son, as parents, as kids. Any topics, burning issues, concerns, doubts, just send it in, and we'll address it as questions or topics in an entire podcast. That's it. As usual, Kian, thank you for joining me. But as we end every episode with a typical lesson to our listeners, I want to turn it back to you and ask you to tell our listeners your lesson for today and some thought or word of advice that you'd like to give them.
Ooh, like maybe you should. Actually, it's not. It's pretty simple. Like this podcast went pretty well, and maybe if you start thinking some of you start thinking up your own podcast, and you're a little bit in doubt, maybe you should try one first. You should think of it. Maybe you could get into it first and see how it feels, and don't launch it yet. See how you do, and if you're good at it and you enjoy it, go for it.
Good. I think that's great advice, Key, and I don't think that's specific to podcasts. I think that's just generally in life. If you have an idea, give it a shot, see how it goes. Don't psych yourself out of it and don't be negative. Just give it a run, test it out. And of course, if it doesn't work, you always have the option of closing it out. But, at least you've tried, at least you've given it a shot, and you don't have any regrets that, oh no, what I didn't try it, what would have happened. So, I think that's my lesson in life too, and that's part of why we did this podcast, because I wanted to give it a shot. I wanted to see how successful we would be with this, and learn along the way. So I'm happy we did it, and it's been going well. So great advice, buddy. I like it, and I hope many of our listeners take it on board. Thanks, Kian. It's been great. I know we have a few more episodes lined up with a few more ideas, but we'll also see what our listeners and audience have to come back with. Until the next one, see you later. Take care.
See you later, Papa. Bye.